wanted to speak of, the entire situation with Charlie Kirk because I could not really get myself to even speak about it at the time when it happened because it's a I looked at it as like today's day JFK. It was a tragedy. It was a shocking situation to see such a young youth, prematurely taken out, especially in front of everyone. I have the footage. I'm sure you all seen the footage. I don't want to, have to go over it. I just wanted to speak about his unaliving because I realized that a lot of people have different, questions and different hypotheses of what occurred. And as you see, they had this young man, Tyler Robinson, saying that he is the perpetrator. He have not yet confessed. And many people such as Candace Owens and other vloggers, left and right leaning vloggers are questioning what kind of, the evidence that is being provided. But I personally don't want to go into the evidence as yet. I just wanted to bemoan the passing of a legendary, activist. It's a right-wing activist, a Republican activist, a young youth that has, excel and exceed certain expectations of people who are way beyond his age. So I just wanted to give hats off to this man, Charlie Kirk. And I also wanted to say, I do understand the rebuke that he, received, but I don't understand the vitriol and the revelry, the happiness, the gleefulness to see one perish in such a heinous way. And I'm personally disappointed, in the entire country that participating in the gleeful celebration of this man. And I really noticed the galvanization of the Republican Party and a lot of young around Charlie Kirk. And I wonder if the Democrat Party realize what they're doing, that they're pushing away certain people and, further radicalizing their base. So I just wanted to say, RIP to Charlie Kirk. And it was a tragic moment. I personally find Charlie Kirk to be a diamond in the sky, to tell you the truth. And he's someone that, all mother and fathers would be proud of. He's a bright young man, an intelligent young man. You might not agree with his views, but as you see, he's a confident person that stand on business, that stood on his faith, that believed in family. And I don't really think that those are negative characteristics, regardless if you believe or agree with his politics. I'm saying that, as a Jamaican, as a man from the island, I personally didn't find much what he was saying to be offensive or even insulting. And he spoke. I noticed that there were a lot of misunderstanding of his talks, and maybe not misunderstanding, but purposeful portrayal of Charlie Kirk in a negative sense. And I personally never really sat and listened to Charlie Kirk. I know of Charlie Kirk, but when these negative portrayal, came out, it forced me to look into the clips. And if you have not looked at it, the one they're speaking of about Martin Luther King, I don't believe that Charlie Kirk was speaking of Martin Luther King, the man. I think he was talking about Martin Luther King, the Christian. There were some things that he said that he didn't agree with. And even when he spoke of the, DEI situation, and there's talking about, Charlie Kirk is talking about, BLK woman, I think he was specifically calling out the 4 BLK women that said they were DEI, and they said if it wasn't because of DEI, they probably wouldn't have, been given the chance. As I said, it's the United States of America, it's a free world, and I think that free speech should be defended, not for speech that you like, but for speech that you dislike. Those are the speech that you have to say, hold on, although I don't like it, allow the person to say their piece. It reminds me of the past that I read of, because I weren't alive, how the Malcolm X and JFK, and Martin Luther King. Now they Charlie Kirk. We all know what that means. Means that how them Jesus, man should be able to speak, think, eat, survive, think, feel. These are rights. These are senses given to everyone. And if you have them, you should be able to use them. So I could not find myself to come and speak on Charlie Kirk before Charlie Kirk got put down, and his family get a chance to mourn. So I wanted to wait for a moment before I said something. And it really doesn't matter who unalive Charlie Kirk, because Charlie Kirk have done his work. Charlie Kirk, they said good people don't live too long, and Charlie Kirk will never grow old. So we have to understand that everything is for a good and a wise purpose. So, one would wonder why they want to hurt us. In the great words of the legend Bob Marley says, how long will they unalive our prophets while we stand aside and look? Families and friends, no one should dance on his enemy's grave, much less a youth like Charlie Kirk. And it's evil, almost demonic, even to perpetuate a lie. Since I was small, my grandmother and my mother always said, the devil is a liar. And it's just so shocking, just so unfortunate that I have grown to see so many devils and learned and know so many devils, where it appears that people revel in evil. I'm not saying that Charlie was a saint, and I'm not saying that I am a saint, but there's a time for rejoicing and there's a time for crying. Now, if Tyler Robinson did not do this crime, we're hoping that we realize that in time, so we could look somewhere else, and this is not a decoy or what we would call a patsy. But as of now, the FBI, and Utah police, they're saying, they have images, videos of the suspect. And of course, the government gonna have to prove it. So don't think that the government going to display all of the information that they have currently. You understand? They're not going to display all of the information currently. Now, I wanted to move on this because I think I've watched so many things, Charlie Kirk. I'm sure you watch so many things, Charlie Kirk. You have seen all the news. You've been to the depths of mourning, I'm sure, because you have to have a heart of steel. You have to have a heart of steel to not feel a saddened situation for this young youth and for his family. To me, it's one of the, the saddest thing that, I could remember as far as a youth having his family, having so much ahead of him, so much to gain, and even just to think of the parents. Just to think of the parents. You know how the parents must feel to lose a young youth like that. It's just a disgusting feeling, man. It really is just a disgusting feeling. But like I said, I wanted to move on to a story here that I wanted to speak about a couple of days ago, and it's just kind of shift my mind. But the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, it appears he got a rude awakening, right? When he went to the UN, because the United Nations walked out when he was introduced. Can you imagine that, family and friend? Walked out on him as he delivered a defiant speech to the UN. He delivered it to a practical empty stadium or an empty location. What's amazing is